What's happening, everybody, and welcome to a Wild Time podcast. And tonight's episode is going to be a little on the downside, maybe, but I thought it was an appropriate and a cool idea because, in my opinion, everybody's kind of had one of these situations that's affected you or bothered you, and it makes for a good discussion because it affects everyone differently. And tonight we're going to discuss the top celebrity deaths that affected you, that bothered you, that stayed with you through your life, whether it happened when you were a kid or recently or just any point in your life. You remember where you were at when you heard it. You remember the feelings you felt. And I've got a couple that I want to talk about. Me and my wife actually talked a few times about this, usually on road trips. Long road trips, we'll have in-depth discussions where we talk about stuff like this. So she was like, tonight when I told her this was what the episode was going to be about, she said, Paul Walker's got to be on there. Well, Paul Walker, it didn't affect me that much. It bothered. I mean, it was a sad situation, but me as a person, what the things I like stuff, it was tragic, but it didn't affect me like some of the people I'm going to mention did. So most people a little bit older than I am, they talk about where they were at when Elvis died, how it bothered them, how the nation was basically just heartbroken. JFK's assassination, same deal, man. You hear a lot of the older people talk about those two. That comes to mind. But the first one that really bothered me was Ravishing Rick Rude. Obviously, my favorite wrestler growing up, still to this day. The thing that really bothered me the most was not, besides the point of when your favorite athlete's passing away, was the fact that I didn't feel like he got the proper tribute the night. WWF did a little bit for him, nothing like they should have. WCW, I think they may have put his name up in the year he was born and died on the screen before it came on, maybe mentioned a little bit, but that kind of really bothered me that he didn't get the proper. I mean, he was the top heel for a lot of years, one of the best money drawers. He did so many historic moments being on Raw and Nitro the same night. I mean, that was one of the ultimate curveballs in the history of professional wrestling. The dude was the most charismatic wrestler on the microphone. He just had so much going for him as a professional wrestler, and then he had the injury, obviously, and couldn't get in the ring and do what the dude loved to do. He just couldn't do it. His body wouldn't allow him. But Lou, I think it was in '99. I think I was 8th grade, and I think it was in April. It was in the springtime because I can remember it, and it sucked, man. Owen Hart was up there too, but Rude, as far as professional wrestler goes, everybody knows my thoughts and feelings on that. So that was one, that was probably the first one that I can really remember actually bothering me. And this is not going to be in any particular order. Probably 5 I've got that really stuck out to me, bothered me. The next one is, it's going to be John Ritter. John Ritter was just such on screen, he was just such a cool dude. I mean, he was just down to earth, seemed like nice guy. And if you hear stories from Henry Winkler and his friends off screen that loved him, they say the same thing, that John Ritter was just a sweetheart of a dude, and nobody ever had anything bad to say about him. He was, in the 70s, Three's Company, my goodness, that was one of the shows, on nighttime TV, I'm assuming. I loved watching it on Nick at Night growing up. But the first thing I got to see and really get to know John Ritter from was Problem Child. I can remember going to the movies with my late cousin Brandon and watching Problem Child 1, and he played such a good father in that, man. You could really tell if this dude didn't have a good heart, he's one of the greatest actors of all time, because it just spilled over on screen. You could tell what a great actor he was, a great dude. But I think it was my senior year, man, and he had just came out with a show. It was a really good show. It was him, Katie Seagal, and I can't remember who else on it, but it was a 10 reasons or 10 something other dating my teenage daughter, and it was taken off. It was a really good show. Everybody loved it, and all of a sudden, dude dies, has a heart attack filming the show, and it just, I think he was probably 50, early 50s, maybe mid 50s, and just a tragic death. I mean, it bothered me because, like I said, I like John Ritter. He was in It. I loved him in It, the miniseries, before the remake. I liked him. You know, Problem Child, obviously. He was good in Sling Blade. Played a really good role in Sling Blade. It was pretty comical. And he did a lot of other things too, man. That was cool. But that bothered me. It really did. It stuck with me for a while. Just a lot of that had to do with his friends. Like when they would interview his friends, they were really distraught about it, and you could tell that he meant something to those guys, and he was a legitimately good person. So John Ritter was one that really bothered me. Another one that was similar to that was Patrick Swayze. Patrick Swayze battled pancreatic cancer for a while. I mean, he looked bad, man. And to remember Patrick Swayze, he was almost like the ultimate male in the 80s and 90s. He had it going on, man. Dirty Dancing, I mean, Roadhouse, my goodness. And then he had Black Dog in the 90s, Point Break. And who could ever forget his skit with also the late, great Chris Farley on Saturday Night Live, where they're Chippendale dancers. That's one of the greatest ever. And he was just a cool dude, man. Patrick Swayze was just a cool dude. And when I'll never forget, I think it was Barbara Walters interviews where she talked to him, and he was sick, obviously, lost a lot of weight and stuff. And she was talking to him about it, about the pancreatic cancer and everything. And he was just, man, he was in bad shape. And then he was actually filming a TV show, The Beast, I think it was called, or something. But he was a cop in it, and it was just taking its toll on his body, but he continued to film that. And when he finally passed away, that was a tough one. That was one of the coolest icons in acting, man. Roadhouse still, I mean, you can turn on the TV right now and Roadhouse is on. Usually CMT, but he was just a really cool dude. And it affected me in the same way that John Ritter's did, really. Because a lot of people thought about how cool Patrick Swayze was that he acted with and was friends with and stuff. And there's a couple other ones that really stick out to me. The most recent one was Scott Hall passing away. Razor Ramon Scott Hall from the NWO, Razor Ramon WWF. Just one of the best workers. If you know anything about professional wrestling, you know the ins and outs of the business. If you know when you get in between the ropes and get in there and you've got to do your thing, you guys know what I'm talking about. He was one of the best. I mean, he wasn't the world champ, but buddy, he made a lot of people look good. He made a lot of champions look good. He was big. He could sell his hind end off, man. He had charisma that was unmatched. He was just one of the first cool bad guys, really. And I'm not talking like Tully Blanchard cool. I'm talking like just anti-hero cool, really, to where people started cheering the heels in the mid-90s. And Scott Hall was one of the first guys like that. And he was, like I said, man, as far as his in-ring working ability to be as big as he was probably 6'7", 300, when he was really jacked, he was probably over 3. But probably 275 when he was a little bit leaner, 260, 275, float in between. But he was just, he would sell, he would make the smile. I mean, think about the 1, 2, 3 kid, man. Great worker himself. But Scott Hall may have made his career, man. And that was recent. And I've been hearing details how he passed away and stuff. And it's just so heartbreaking. Kevin Nash said that he had slipped making Kool-Aid, slipped on ice and fell and broke his hip or knee or hip one. Forgive me if I'm wrong on this, but he laid him on the floor. Like he passed out from the pain and laid on the floor for like a day until he could finally get over to his phone and get a hold of the hospital, the ambulance to come and get him. And then when he did, they got him to the hospital, and started having blood. They did surgery on him, but from the surgery, he started getting blood clots travel to his heart and caused him to have like 3 heart attacks. And just hearing Kevin Nash talk about when they had him on life support, him and his friends, the Clique, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Kevin Nash, and X-Pac, all 1, 2, 3 Kid, they all called and had like a moment with his body as they took him off life support. They were all talking and crying and stuff. It was pretty moving, and that's really probably the latest. But the next two, I can tell you exactly where I was at, the way I felt, and how bothered, how it bothered me. And this first one was the late Gunnar Hansen, who played Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Man, that one shook, because growing up, anybody that knows me knows how big I am in horror films. Texas Chainsaw Massacre being my holy grail of horror and just movies altogether. And I've been so obsessed with that franchise and that horror film since I've been tiny, man, probably 4 or 5 years old. And I always wanted to meet the cast. And once I got out of high school and started figuring out how the convention scene worked and stuff, that was one of my game plans, was to meet the cast, especially Gunnar Hansen. And 2012, I think it was, me and Lindsay and Max traveled up to Indianapolis to Days of the Dead. And they had a Texas Chainsaw Massacre reunion. And it was not just the cast from the original, but R.A. Hayloft, Bill Johnson, Jeff Burr, Bill Mosley, everybody basically was still alive at that point. And not only did I get to meet these guys, but I got autographs, I got to pick their brains. And I can remember talking to Gunnar Hansen and asking him like a question or two, and kind of being like, well, dude, I don't want to aggravate you. And he's like, no. He said, I enjoy this. I enjoy talking to somebody that knows a little bit about it and appreciates it. So there's a picture that Lindsay got. I hadn't even knew it, but I was sitting down on one knee next to him, and we're in deep conversation, man. And we're talking about how he was, how he got the role of Leatherface, how the guy they originally got in the role wasn't Gunnar Hansen. It was some guy, just some big dude they got, and he had passed out at a hotel they had put him up in. He got drunk and just passed out at the hotel, and they couldn't get him to the set. So they fired him, and Tobe Hooper got Gunnar back and told him, we want you for the gig. So that's how he became Leatherface. And he said Tobe Hooper had asked him, he said, Gunnar Hansen was just articulate. He was very intelligent, wise. I mean, you could look at this dude, gray hair, big gray beard. He looked like a college professor and carried himself like one also. Very intelligent. Was an author. But I can remember him talking about how Tobe Hooper said, Tobe Hooper was the director. Another tragic death that bothered me, but not on the level of these guys. Anyways, he said, Tobe asked him, he said, well, are you crazy? And Gunnar was like, no. He said, well, do you want to hurt people? Do you feel like you can hurt people? And Gunnar was like, no. And then Tobe was like, well, can you act crazy? And Gunnar was like, yeah, that's no problem. I can do that. So I just thought that was a cool little story he shared with me. But I was, to speak about the death of him, I had stayed all night over at Lindsay's house and woke up, checked, I think it was MySpace. No, it was Facebook at the time. It wasn't MySpace. Checked Facebook, and it was everywhere at that point. Gunnar, and he had been sick a while, but he had kept it so secretive. I don't think many of the horror community or anybody really knew, but I think it was pancreatic cancer also, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I had heard that. And, I can remember just waking up and being like, dude, that's awful. That is awful. But I was very thankful in that moment that I got to meet him and hang out with him and talk to him and stuff in Indianapolis. Really, really thankful for that, because to know the dude, got to know him a little bit and stuff, and what a sweet man he was, and played the grandfather of slashers, Leatherface, man. And you talk about just a character. I mean, there's a lot of levels to that onion, a lot of layers, I guess you'd say, not levels. There's a lot of levels to Metroid, I think. But anyways, Gunnar Hansen really bothered me bad. And this next one was probably the one that bothered me the most. And it was a situation where you kind of expected it to come years ago, and then it never came, and then you got kind of like, well, this dude's it's not gonna get him, obviously, because he's been in and out of trouble, he's overdosed, but he's the most talented singer, man, the most talented musical artist, in my opinion. But that's one man's opinion. It was Scott Wyling, man, from Stone Temple Pilots and Velvet Revolver. I mean, that one really was like a stake to the heart, because that dude supplied the soundtrack to my life. From the time I was in middle school till, he's still doing it. He's passed away, but his music still plays here every day, or in my dump truck, or wherever I'm at. But I can remember getting up, going to the bathroom. This had to be 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Got up, went to the bathroom, and my phone had lit up like crazy. And I was like, man, what is this? And I didn't even see the messages or anything. The first thing I seen was Yahoo. And it said, they always have trending, people trending, things trending. And it said Scott Wyling trending. And I knew at that moment what had happened. He wasn't trending because he's putting out a new album. It wasn't trending because he got a new girlfriend or nothing. I had a good feeling. And once I clicked on it, passed away. And I was like, God. It was, it took a little bit to listen to the music again. It really bothered me that bad. And it still does. It's almost selfish. I almost feel selfish for feeling like that. The dude's got a family and stuff, and his music just affected me so much growing up, so much right now, that was the one that really was a gut punch, because you thought that he was doing better than what he used to do. Earlier on, man, he was always in trouble, or there were stories about him relapsing, but you kind of figured he may have had it together somewhat and was going to beat this or survive it, I guess. And unfortunately, it didn't happen. And a crazy fact about that situation is one of my favorite wrestlers that passed away, Brian Pillman. That one, Pillman was a big influence of mine, but it was a little bit earlier on. It didn't really affect me the way that Rude did, which was a few years later, 2-3 years later. But Pillman passed away in Bloomington, Minnesota, which was where Scott Wyling passed away at also. Wyling passed away in his tour bus, whereas Pillman was in a hotel room, but still, man, it was just eerie to me. It's kind of just, I know it was just a real eerie thing. But everybody's got those are mine that really bothered me. And there's a few more that I find tragic and stuff, man. All of them obviously are tragic, but some that's kind of sadder. Paul Walker, that was one that was really sad. Michael Jackson, I remember I was in Myrtle Beach, I think, when Michael Jackson had died and found out about it. I'm trying to see if there's anybody that I forgot. I'm sure there is, but that one was the ones I told you guys just now. Those are the ones that affected me personally more than any of the rest. Now, hopefully, I'm leaving to go on a cruise tomorrow. May do some more down there and post them when I get back. This was kind of I should have probably left on a happier note, shouldn't I? But I thought this was a cool topic. I haven't really seen a lot talked about it. Which ones bother you? What say you? Who bothered you? Which death bothered you the most? Affected you, and why did it? That's the case. Why did it bother you? What did you connect with that person you felt like? So I am Adam Newsom. I wanted to call myself Adam Wilde, throwback to 2004, but I didn't. It's a Wild Time podcast with an E. And this episode that you have just viewed, which celebrity death affected you the most and bothered you? So you guys, thanks for tuning in. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this channel, spread the word. Do me a favor, and maybe we can keep turning these out. I'm hoping to have, I'll get to that actually. I talked to R.A. Mahaloff, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 Leatherface. We're working on getting a date for him right now. He's on board. Alan Danziger, Jerry from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Talk to him. He's on board. I've got a lot of people that's on. Remco Pardue from UFC 2 and 4. Big dude. The one that viciously knocked out Orlando Week with his elbows in one of the most brutal knockouts in history. Going to talk to him. He's on board. Another clothing line. Papa Bear Fitness. Talk to those dudes. They're excited. They're looking. Right now is just finding time for everybody. Vicky Guerrero, I reached out, talked to her a little bit. She's supposed to get back with me. But I've got some cool guests coming up. But you can't forget about our locals, our favorites. Max, he did sports with me the other day, sports movies. Lindsay, we're going to try to do something weekly on kind of like marriage and relationship. It got a lot of love, actually. I've probably had several messages about how much they enjoyed that episode, so we're going to kind of go back to that one. Jerry come over. We did an awesome horror podcast. We're going to continue to do that. We did Fright Night versus Lost Boys, which was really fun discussion, actually, man. And who knows who else may pop in. But thank you guys for tuning in. God bless you, and like and subscribe. Don't forget that.